This show is brought to you by Female Alliance Media, by women, for women.
Hello, and welcome to the Say It Out Loud podcast. I am your host, Christine Daynard, and the goal of this podcast is to encourage you to live your best and most authentic life by digging deeper and finding connection through vulnerability. I believe we have been taught that vulnerability is a weakness, when in fact it is our superpower. In this space, I will share personal stories and conversations with others so you can be empowered by their strength and inspired to take action in your own life. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get started. Well, hello and welcome back to the Say It Out Loud podcast. You got me, Christine D, and I have a lovely guest. We've already been laughing and crying, so who knows where this is going to go today. But I have Vicky Mackinnon in the kitchen studio with me around Sunshine Island, and we are going to talk about some of the stuff that's gone on in Vicky's life, because there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's a lot. So, but first, I would love for Vicky to be able to just tell us a little bit about her and why she chose to come and share parts of her story.
Okay, so my name is Vicky, and I'm just going to go straight for it.
Yeah, go.
I am a brain tumor survivor and newly diagnosed multiple sclerosis patient.
Yep, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
So now, what else about Vicky? Because there's a lot of great things to love about Vicky.
I am a wife. I am a mom of two beautiful girls. I don't really know what
Have a okay, for those of you who can't tell, the power went out. So good thing we're recording on a separate device.
Wow.
Because, yeah.
I kind of thought that we got cut off. I was like, and restart.
So we might lose power again. So we might be talking in the dark, but
That's okay.
But you know what? It's all good. We're still here.
We're around
We're still here.
Sunshine Island. We're good.
Right?
We're good.
We're good.
We're good.
So no, but I was gonna say you're somebody with a great sense of humor. I was just talking about you earlier today in my story, saying that, you know, no matter what has gone on in your life, and I'm sure sometimes you have to dig really deep, but you seem to be able to find the good a lot. And that's so incredibly helpful when you're going through so much in the world.
Well, I mean, you could sit in that dark spot for a long time. And I've heard it before from other podcasts. Nobody's going to come and rescue you. Nobody's going to come and get you. Nobody's going to push you. In fact, they'll just walk by and be like, hey, and they'll keep walking. So my driver is my kids and my husband, obviously, but my kids. I'm their role model. So if I just sit there and dwell on the woe is me, life ends. Life ends, right? So I pick up my big girl panties and I keep walking.
That a girl.
Yeah, I keep walking.
That a girl. So you obviously have a lot to say, and I don't just mean because you talk a lot, but you are a little like,
get along.
That's right, because we both talk a lot. But you know, the first thing you mentioned is that you're a brain tumor survivor. Mm-hmm. So talk us through that. When did you find out that you had a brain tumor, and what has been the impact of that on you in your world?
So it all started like shortly before the pandemic. So I want to say like 2019, maybe even like 2018. We were actually in the middle of a massive home reno. And I remember waking up that morning and I had a massive headache. And I've never had migraines. I've always been a weather impact type of headache. And it hurt so bad I couldn't even put my head on the pillow. And I was working as a PSW at the time, and I remember going downstairs and I told our contractor, I think you're going to have to go home because putting baseboards in today is not great. My head hurts. I just don't feel well, and I have to go into work. And he was like, yep, not a problem. So I remember calling my husband and saying, like, I'm going to be going into work. I don't feel well. And he was like, yep, not a problem. Let me know. And I was working in Guelph at the time. I got about halfway through my shift, and by that point, I was holding rails to keep myself vertical. I called my husband at the end of my shift, and I said, like, I want you to stay on the phone with me because I just don't feel good. And he was like, okay, yeah. And I was telling him exactly how I was coming home and whatnot. Headache led to a 3-month bout of what I thought was vertigo. So I did anything from acupuncture, medication, like name it. I was trying to get rid of vertigo. My mom suffers from vertigo. So she was like, once you get on those medications, it should go away. Like it just wasn't letting up. The room, I just felt like a drunk with a hangover that just would not subside. It was awful. So I went to my doctor finally, and I was just like, I've had it. Like my head actually hurts. There's headaches that cause like a dull ache, right? It's uncomfortable. You can kind of push through it. Again, I don't suffer from migraines, so I'm not speaking at that level, but, I was in pain. And so she sent me for an MRI, and 3 days before Christmas, I found out I had a brain tumor.
Wow.
So she called me and she's like, I want you to come into the office. I have some news for you. And I knew right away. My heart just sank. And I honestly thought I had cancer at this point. Like you just go to the worst, right? Anything above that that's not as bad is great. It's a bonus. So she sat me down and she's like, I'm not even going to beat around the bush, Vicky. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is what you got. I don't know anything about it. I'm not going to pretend I do. But this is what you got. We sat there on Google. We looked at some pictures. We looked at my own MRI. I didn't know what I was looking at. I'm not a doctor. And she was like, are you okay? Like, can I do anything to help you in the meantime? Because we obviously have to start this, the referral and whatnot. And if you live in Ontario, you know how that goes.
It does take a long time.
It takes a long time. Now, granted, I was very fortunate. This all happened prior to the pandemic, so I was lucky-ish. And I said, no, like, that's great. That's, I have an answer. At least I know what's going on. And I left the office, and she probably wondered, she's not okay. I didn't cry. I think it was like that shock.
100%.
Like shock. So I sat in the car and my husband was like texting me, like, what's going on? What's going on? What are the results? What are the results? And I was like, I'm good. I'm going to go do some groceries and I'm going to head home and then we'll talk about it. And he was like, oh, okay. I was in the middle of Zares bawling my eyes out because it finally hit me. Holy shit. I have something growing in my head and we don't even know what this is. Like, we just don't know what it is. So this acoustic neuroma, it grows for me, it was on my left side and it kind of impacts your vestibular nerve. So my tumor was like wrapped around this nerve. Some people, it can affect their hearing. They can have like tinnitus, like constant ringing in the ear. I had no symptoms. No other symptoms other than this really bad headache. That's it. So I got referred to a specialist in Hamilton. I will not disclose said name. I was there from the moment I walked into his office till the time I left, 7 minutes. He didn't tell me what I had. He looked at me and said, I've got people who live till about 90 years old with what you have. I have no intention of doing anything for you. You're just going to have to live with it. I left there in absolute, I was crying. I was so upset. I was literally thrown this diagnosis and nobody had yet really explained to me what it was I was going through. So that was a hard no. I won't be dealing with that guy again. Really. I went back to my doctor and I said, I would recommend that you never send anybody. He's got really bad bedside manner. And she says, I just want you to be mindful that doctors are not supposed to be your friend. They are the specialist. And I was like, okay, I'll keep an open mind, but I'm not going back there. So she did some research and I ended up in London. Dr. Hebb. He sat me down, both me and my husband, and he explained to us everything about this tumor, everything. And he looked me square in the face and he said, if I was you, we'd be taking this out tomorrow.
Wow.
It's got to go. You're too young. You have a very young family. You have a whole life ahead of you. It's got to go. And this is the time to do it. You're healthy, right? We're not going to do this when you're 90. We're going to do it now when you're in your prime, right? Prime. But I felt good. And so I was like, okay, great. Let's get it going, right? So in the meantime, I was on this medication. You can only take Tylenol. And Tylenol doesn't really work for me, right? You can't take an ibuprofen because it's a blood thinner. And at any point I could have been called for surgery. So you can't be on that. Well, the pain started getting worse again. Headaches were nonstop. Fatigue started kicking in. Now, I don't know if a lot of this is just, pardon the pun, all in your head, but I was going through like a bottle of Tylenol a month.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it was getting that bad. So when I went to my doctor and I said, like, I think I need something stronger than just over-the-counter meds. And she was like, not a problem. We'll send you to a pain specialist. That was a horrible experience. Because he essentially told me I was addicted to pain meds. I don't take medication. I'm the first one to say, don't put me on anything because I'm not going to do it. And he compared me to an addict that gets revived and then overdoses again in the bathroom at the ER. And I left there in a fit of rage. But the medication that he did put me on did provide some relief. And very shortly thereafter, I was called for surgery. So that was great. I think I was bumped 2 or 3 times before I actually got into surgery. And while that is frustrating, I kind of looked at it as obviously somebody's got it way worse than I do right now. So count my blessings and waited my turn. But April 3rd, 2019, that was my day.
Wow.
That was my day.
Wow.
It was the most, I remember laying there the night before and it was kind of like that excitement before your wedding day. It was like, oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, all this prep, all this whatever. And it wasn't until we pulled up into the parking garage at London University, it's when it hit, like, oh my God, this is really happening.
Like, I'm about to have brain surgery.
They're going to be in my head. Like,
literally.
They're going to see, like, where I think. Like, and it was a very, very silent drive up. And I think both of us it was the unknown. Like, we're literally treading water we have obviously never done. It was scary. So I did my final MRI. They put these cute little like Cheerio stickers all over your head, and it's just to kind of mark everywhere where they're going to be and what they need to do. And the staff are amazing at London University. They're just absolutely amazing. And yeah, they came in, we did our pre-everything surgery and saw the surgeon, which was nice because you get to see them before, like, hey. And then, yeah, we don't say goodbyes because, yeah, I'm coming back. But yeah, rolled off. And I remember they move you from your bed to this board. Not a bed, it's a board. It's very tiny. And I remember the room being so cold. And I looked over at the nurses. They were unpacking everything, getting everything ready. And I looked over to the anesthesiologist, and he was sitting in the middle. And I just started to cry. And the nurse put her hand on my arm as she's getting me ready. And she was like, you're in good hands. You're going to be okay. And I was like, shit just got real. And that was the last thing I said. They put this mask on my face And I don't know about anybody else who's ever been in surgery, but you're like, I'm going to fight it. I'm going to fight it. It's my last hurrah before they knock my ass out. I'm going to fight this. I don't even think I got to one.
Mm-hmm. Takes you out fast.
I was like, peace out. And then 9 hours later.
Wow, 8 or 9 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess the intricacies of the brain would really have you moving slowly and carefully.
Yeah, because it's not only a neurosurgeon, it's also an ear, nose, and throat specialist. So before I went into the surgery, there's conversation about where they're going to go in from, how they're going to do this, side effects and whatnot. So Dr. Hebb was saying, like, we're going to go in behind your ear. And we go right through the eardrum. We drill right through the eardrum, and then that gives us the opening right to the tumor. And I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, but some of the side effects, obviously one of the side effects is you're going to be completely deaf on that side. Once that eardrum's gone, there's no coming back. Okay, cool. I can live with one ear, right? People live with neither. Not a problem. Let's do that. I didn't realize that, some facial paralysis may come into that. So I do have some nerve damage, as you can see.
She's pointing to her eye.
So I do have nerve damage on my left side. I have a crooked smile. I own it sometimes. But this is who I am, right? Like, the alternative could have been a lot worse. So when I did come out of surgery, I had very much a drooped face. When my husband came to see me in ICU, or in the recovery area, my eyeballs were like spinning. And as soon as they made me open my eyes, like, to acknowledge, yes, I'm awake, I threw up because like, yeah, I'm here and everything. Yeah. So
that's the worst.
It was the worst. My husband's like, I've never seen people's eyeballs do that. And I was like, I didn't see it, but I was there. Yeah.
You're experiencing it from a completely different angle.
It was awful.
Wow. So crazy.
Yeah.
So I have so many questions. So first of all, when you leave the hospital, so the surgery is long, clearly intensive. Like, this is very intricate detailing going on in there. Now you leave, you go home. Like, do you stay at the hospital for recovery for a period of time?
So I was there for 3 days. I wanted to get the hell out of there, right?
It's just like having a baby. Actually, that's
right?
Maybe one day longer than having a baby nowadays.
So my husband and my mother-in-law and my kids came up. It was the first time they saw me after that. Droopy face, swollen, everything. That evening, they had just gotten home. Probably around 7. And I called my husband and I'm like, they're going to let me go home. Can you come back and get me? And he's like, what? 3 days. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm ready. Let's go. Like, come and get me. And he's like, okay. So he comes back to London and picks me up. So here's what I think happened between him leaving and him coming back. I sneezed and I heard this massive pop, and I didn't put anything to it. I'm deaf. Like, this is all new to me. Like, I got legit a hole in the side of my head. Like, I don't know. What now was probably hindsight 2020, what caused my CSF leak.
What is that?
It's a cranial leak. How do you say that? It's like a clear fluid, and it's essentially like fluid on the brain. And if it doesn't, had I not gone back for readmission, there was a really good chance it would have gotten infected and I would have ended up with meningitis.
Whoa.
Yes. So it's really serious. So I remember on the drive home, you could feel like it was like damp, but it wasn't leaking. I was probably home a couple days, and then it started, like, you can see it draining from the incision. So he called the hospital and he's like, so, like, what do you think about, like, what should we do? And they're like, yeah, she should probably come back. So they put a stitch, and we got about halfway home again. And I was like, it's still leaking. And he was like, Vic, like, we need to go back. And at this point I had had enough. Like, I had spent the whole time in Emerge. I was just like, I just want to go home. And you don't realize how heavy your head is until you cannot hold it upright anymore. Like, I was just exhausted. So we went home, and he called the hospital, and he said, it's still leaking. And so I had to go back. I saw the ENT specialist, and they had me put my head in between my knees. Like, I was feeling good. Like, I was fine. I had my walker at home. Like, I was walking. I was independent. Like, it was great. So I'm sitting there in the office. He's like, hey, go ahead. Put your head between your knees. If we can redirect the fluid, like either through your nose or through your mouth, we can correct this. I'm sitting there with my head between my knees, and he's looking at my husband, and he's shaking his head. No.
Oh, damn.
No, she's going to be staying. So I got readmitted. You want to see a full-grown woman throw the biggest temper tantrum? They had to move me to another room. That's how bad I was. I was livid that I was going back to the hospital. Like, well, I was in the hospital, but that I was being readmitted. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I had to wait for my bed. I went upstairs back to the neurology unit. And I mean, and staff's looking at you like, did you not, why are you back? And I was like, well, got this fun thing called a leak. So they put, like, it's kind of like, the way they describe it is it's kind of like a spinal tap, but it's kind of like an epidural. And I was like, well, I don't want either one of those. Well, you're going to get it. So I thought I had time. I got my bed. I'm laying there. I finally get myself chilled. And I thought, well, they're not going to get to me till tomorrow. So I'll be able to have a good night's rest, and then they'll attack me.
Famous last words, I'm guessing.
Like an hour, like maybe an hour, if that. Nurse is at my door, and she's like, hey, they're ready for you. So they wheel me down to, it's like a big x-ray bed. And I don't know all these fancy words or whatever. So I'm laying on this bed on my stomach, and all they keep telling you is don't move. So what they're doing is they're putting the needle right in your spine. So essentially what they're doing is they're redirecting the fluid from my brain down my spine and out. So they were doing this, what I believe is so many mils every hour on the hour. So they would raise my bed all the way up to the top, and then it would drain, and then they put my bed all the way back down to where I was. All the hours of the night, every hour on the hour. I was there a week, and then, finally they said, we're going to take the tap out, and as long as nothing starts up again, you can go home. And I got to go home.
Wow. Like, I'm like almost on the edge of my seat over here.
Yeah. Like, it's crazy. It is just absolutely crazy what technology and, like, it's all stuff that I didn't think was ever going to happen.
Yeah.
It was never even, we never had this conversation about it. It just, yeah.
Wow.
But I came on the other side of it, and I'm good.
I'm just like, I'm almost speechless over here, because I'm just like, my whole body can feel the moments of you going through that. So Vicky's just showing me, is this a picture or a video?
This is a picture. So it literally just looks like a little tube that goes into your spine.
Wow.
And then this little, I call it a nurse on a stick. She's very quiet. But she sucks the life right out of you. Literally. And then they filled this bag by the end of the week.
So they just took it out. They don't put something back in.
No.
So
like as soon, it was probably about the third hour, you can actually feel the pressure coming off my brain.
So it's almost like inflammation?
Yeah.
I would imagine, so that by the time, like, I'm just trying to, like, maybe that's not the correct term. Maybe that's not exactly what it is, but, like, I would imagine that would add pressure, because you're.
So I always had the pressure after surgery because like there's swelling, right? My face was quite swollen, and as things are healing, the swelling goes down, right? So that fullness, for lack of better words, was always there. And then I guess with the fluid being there, it just never subsided. So it must be this new, right? And I'm on pain meds at this point. Like, so as things are progressing, it wasn't until like every hour I'm changing tea towels off my shoulder. Like I have pictures of, sitting there because it's just constantly leaking. So yeah, like I remember at one point looking at the nurse and going, oh my God, I feel so good. Like I don't have a headache anymore. It was like instant relief. And I couldn't wait to go home. I could not wait to go home. Now I suffered PTSD really bad. I was at home and I remember waking up out of a dead sleep. I could not breathe. My chest felt heavy and like it was cooler. So I would wake my husband up. We were both sleeping on the couch because I couldn't sleep horizontally. I had to kind of stay upright. And I remember telling my husband, like, I can't breathe. And he would be like, well, what do you want me to do? And I would like, open up the door. And what we now know was post-traumatic stress disorder.
Huh.
And it was my nurse practitioner who took my 21 staples and 1 stitch out. During that appointment, I had an attack. And she was like, I know what's going on and we're going to address that. I need to get this out of your head first. And she sat me down and she said, I know what you're going through. You've been through a lot. You've been poked and prodded at multiple times. And we're going to help you. So she put me on a medication and she said, we're doing this for 3 months. We're going to re-stabilize everything that's going on upstairs. And after 3 months, I handed over my medication and I said, we're done. And I've been fortunate, knock on wood, I have not had to go back on that medication. But I definitely know now when people say, I know what a panic attack is. I know what that anxious feeling is. I've been there.
Wow. It's such an intense thing. And like, so how old were you when you discovered you had a brain tumor?
So I had the surgery 4 years ago. And it was about 2 years prior to that. So it was 2 years of like back and forth.
Well, it took 2 years for you to get the specialist.
Yeah. Oh. No, to get that surgery.
I mean, that's what, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because I kept getting bumped. Poor receptionist, every time she would call, she'd be like, oh, are you sitting down? I'd be like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, and I remember getting so angry with her on the phone and I would call her back and be like, I am so sorry. And she'd be like, you know what? Like, I get it. You are waiting just as much as the next guy. And it was her that told me, just look at it from a perspective of you've got it pretty good. Then that person does not right now. And that's,
you rolled with it. So like basically you find out you have a brain tumor, you're in your early 40s. I'm just clarifying that because our listeners can't see you. Right. Yeah. Well, maybe they've watched the reel that I've made up from the little footage I'm taking right now. But other than that, they really aren't seeing a lot of you as they're listening. So I just want them to sort of paint a picture, right? You've got young kids at home, you're in your early 40s. And I'm just curious, I'm sure maybe you asked this question, but is it very common for women in their early 40s to get a brain tumor? Like,
I really don't know. Like the way that the neurologist told me, because like, it's just literally bad luck. You've probably had this all your life. Most definitely you've had this all your life. Just one day it just gets angry and flares. And that's where all this started.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like at that time, because I didn't know you then, so we sort of like connected through social media at some point along the ride. So like was probably, well, through the pandemic we were connected, right? So it must have been like right after your surgery then ish that you were started following along. I'm going to guess. So like, that's how we were introduced. So I don't know you terribly well personally. I just know we've been connected through Instagram, which is really kind of cool that here we are sitting here, talking after, like, it's cool because when you are following or, people online and then you actually get a chance to sit down and talk with them, it's it's almost surreal, right? It's so neat to make that in-person connection. Like there are a lot of negative things about social media, but there are some really cool and great things about social media.
Yeah.
And this is one of them, that we get to do this. Where was I going with that? I was going to go somewhere with that. Is that, well, here you are, you're in your young, early 40s. I'm going to guess this doesn't happen a lot to young 40s, because if the first doctor in Hamilton was like, oh yeah, I have patients that have this until they're 80, like, you know, there's a good chance that this is not a very common thing.
I'm going to say no. I just did my second brain tumor walk. Was it last weekend, the weekend before that? And there's only one other local that I know who has we had the same surgery. Now, my last place of employment, ironically, one of the girl that was training me for my job, her daughter had it as well.
Wow.
So, I mean, while doesn't seem, well, it's like when you buy a car, right? You don't realize everybody has your car until you drive one.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So it isn't until you speak with people, because I mean, nobody can see my scar, right? Unless my hair is up and I turn my head and you can see it. People might question, like, oh, well, what happened there, right? Same like people don't know I'm deaf. So, I mean, you can sit beside me and have a full-blown conversation on my left side, and I'll just turn around and be like, you talking to me? Because I can't hear you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to put little signs at my desk saying deaf on left. And people think I'm being funny, and I'm just like, dude, she don't work. Like, she's out of service. Like,
but I love that you have such a great sense of humor. I think this is where I was going to go, is like, this must have always been in you, this more jolly side, this look on the bright side sort of personality or characteristics about you. Because I mean, I think that I mean, I can't even imagine. You've described to us, like, literally my body feels almost paralyzed with the energy that I'm feeling as a result of you telling your story about what you went through. And because I'm like, oh my God, like I can't even fathom it. I can't even imagine it. But to go through that and have to recover from that, and then the PTSD, and then like, it probably just felt like, especially from the time that you were diagnosed to the time that you were finally in a position of feeling relatively healed. I mean, that was probably it's
a long stretch. It's a lot of, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are moments where I'm just like, this freaking sucks, right? Why me? Why can't I just hear from both ears, right? And I think, like, in those moments where it's just like, you know, like a little temper tantrum, and then I think, well, what the hell is that going to do for you? What is that going to do for you? Because there's always somebody else who's got it worse, right? And that's kind of how I look at it. It's not that I, you know, wish worse on other people, but it's somebody's battling a much bigger fire than you are right now. And you know what? And some people hide it just as well, right? There's people on their deathbeds and they're still smiling right to the last moment, right? Again, like, there are people who look up to you, and there are people who, they might think, you know, oh, today, like, my arm hurts and it's the end of the world. And then you can be that positive light where it's like, oh, I just had something pulled out of my brain. It's not that bad, you know? And they're like, oh, that's great, right? You know?
But it is all relative.
It is all relative.
And so I want to bring that up too, because, like, I mean, clearly you're somebody who chooses to look on the bright side, and you know, you know that, yes, of course, there's always somebody in the world that has something worse off, right? That's always a reality.
It's always.
But it doesn't dismiss the fact that you were going through something really heavy, really big, emotional, physical, like stressful, like all of these things.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to have had many moments, and probably many extended moments during that time where you were in a pool of tears. And
I remember, and this is the hard part.
It's okay. Take your time.
I remember before surgery, there was conversation of a DNR. Because all I kept thinking was, if I come out of this unwell, My family has to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling my husband, I just want to sign it. I don't want to impose. And he kept saying, don't worry about it. We'll make that decision should we have to cross that bridge, but we won't. Again, Mr. Optimistic. And thank God he is. But it was that moment where I almost gave up. I was almost throwing in the towel. Like, I don't want to deal with this because I don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
The outcome was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
It was pretty awesome.
It really was. And continues to be.
Yeah, until last year.
You know, I don't know. It's almost, I don't understand how some of us get a harder hand to deal with. You know, it's like, and sure, again, there are other people out there that maybe have it worse. But the reality is, you've now come through and recovered from this brain tumor and surgery and PTSD as a result of. And then within a couple of years,
I was experiencing some numbness in my legs. I sit often with my feet up on the coffee table crossed, right?
yeah.
Very ladylike. And I just remember I kept switching and switching more than normal. I didn't think anything of it. Just thought, oh, she's got thick thighs and less blood pressure. Things aren't flowing. And then it dawned on me that this is not right. Like the whole inside of my, like between my knees to my like groin area, like the inner thighs was like numb, like a freezing. Like, you know, when you go to a dentist's office,
yeah.
like that numb, you can feel it, but it feels weird. And then I went to the doctor after I started experiencing numbness in my arms. So she sent me for an x-ray thinking, okay, it's got maybe just a pinched nerve. Not a big deal. You know, people get pinched nerves all the time. That came back normal. Went for my MRI because I do those yearly to check, and I will do that until the day that I die. And they went just a slight smidgen further down on my neck than what they typically do. Now, I had this done in Cambridge because London and COVID. And that's when they saw some white marks in my MRI. Lesions is what they call them. So my doctor called me. I was at work again.
Good Lord.
And she said,
God. Oh, Vicky.
are you at work? And I was like, yeah, I am. And I'm going to guess with you calling me, it's not good news. And she says, I'm afraid not. I'm pretty sure you have MS. And I was like, oh, pretty sure. What? And she's like, your x-ray came back normal. But your MRI came back with some lesions. Now, obviously, until you are seen by a specialist, we can't make a diagnosis, but that's typically what it is. And I was like, okay. Had an absolute breakdown, another temper tantrum at work, and thank God for supportive colleagues. I'm pretty sure I went home or I stayed. I can't remember. No, I went home. And I had to break this news to my husband and my kids and my mom. Because I didn't torment them enough. We're going to go another ring around the rosy here. So my husband came home and I told him, and, you know, he was very calm and said, okay, like, there's no sense getting worked up yet. It sucks. Yes, don't get me wrong, but we don't know. We don't know. Let's hope for medical error here because we just don't know.
Right.
And that's kind of how I was like, you know what? That's the reality. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So why am I getting worked up? Carried on and got a referral to a new specialist. And it was kind of my way to get my foot in the door, right? I'll take a chance on anybody at this point. I'll go to the vet at this point. Because the wait lists are so long, right?
Yeah.
And they did a bunch of testing, and it wasn't until the appointment just kept getting longer and longer. And I was just like, we should have been done by now, right? And he came in after the student kind of did her thing. And as soon as he walked in the room, I looked at him right in the eye, and he says, "I'm so sorry." It's the worst thing a doctor could say when they walk into a room. "I'm sorry." No, I get it. They're sorry. And I just broke down. And I remember telling my husband, this is so unfair. This is so unfair. Like, when will this end? How much more can you throw at me? So we drove back home from London, and he, how are we going to tell the kids? And out of all of this, I wasn't even concerned for me. What about my kids? Is this hereditary? What's their life going to be like? I wasn't even focused on me. What is this going to be like for my family? But now I just live one day at a time, because there's no sense dwelling on it, because it'll happen when it happens. So I do my treatments. I go for infusion treatments. I go for one on the 25th of this month. So you start with 2. You do a day 0, and then you go back on day 14. So it's essentially like they split the dose in 2. So you do half, see how you tolerate it. And this will be my very first full dose. So they put a nice little needle in your hand, and I got another nurse on a stick beside me. And usually I get knocked out because of the medication they give you. But yeah, I'm there for about 5 hours, and I'm treated like a queen. The nurses there are amazing. And I am amongst people like me. Which is nice. Yeah. We're all there. It's unspoken, but we're all fighting a battle nobody knows about.
Wow.
Yeah. We're part of a community we don't want to be part of, but we support each other.
But it's just kind of nice to be in the trench with other people who are going through the same thing, right? Like you say, even if it's unspoken, you're still there together.
Yeah. When you look over and you're like, she's having a bad day. I don't need to point it out to her. I don't need to tell her, man, you look like shit. She knows she looks like shit. I know she feels like shit. Why? Because I feel like shit too. But we're here. We're in the same room. And we still laugh and we smile. Why? Because we've all been there. Right?
Yeah. Wow. So I love that. I mean, man, we've all been through challenges, but this is some heavy icing on your cake.
Yeah, it's like fondant.
Yeah. Really, really thick fondant. Yeah. So and if you don't want to go down this road, we don't have to. But I was going to say, what does this look like? Like, traditionally, what have they prepared you for?
They haven't really prepared me for anything. And I say that because, one, I'm fairly young, and we've caught this very early. So he was very confident in saying, we're going to get you on treatment. And he was very optimistic. Like he says, like, my patients, I could tell you that person there has MS and you wouldn't know it. Why? Because they do what I ask them to do. They eat healthy, they exercise, they have a good attitude. Now, if you're going to sit there and you're going to have a pity party for yourself, you're going to go downhill really fast. And if you don't eat properly, and hello, do I look like I eat fruits and veggies all the time? No, man, I love my good glass of wine. But I did cut back on my wine because he said I'm supposed to. But you take things, you take a little bit out of your basket and you put a little bit back in your basket, right? Yeah. Like, I still have to live a happy, fulfilled life. I do have days where it's like, okay, I have a bit of a flare going on and I have to listen to my body and say, okay, I can't do this. So between the head, I have really bad balance because I don't have a vestibular nerve on that side. I have one vestibular nerve on my right, and that does my whole balance.
Wow. It's amazing what the body can do, isn't it?
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So there are things where if I do too rapidly, because I forget, like, hey, you're a little deformed. You can't do that. There's that quick moment where it's like, oh, slow it down a little bit. Or, you know, you can't go and clean an entire basement on your own and move things. And because your body will tell you the next day, you suck. You couldn't do that, you know? So one day at a time, I have to listen to my body and trust that those who are in my support team medically have my back.
Well, and you seem to me like somebody who's like, you know, she's a go-getter. She does all the things for everyone. She helps to support everybody else. And it's probably very hard for you to ask for help sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I'm horrible at that. Yeah. No, I'm not very good.
Yeah. But I mean, that's okay because it's a practice.
It is. And I think part of it is if I ask for help, I'm showing weakness and part of me, and it sounds stupid, I'm falling, like the disease wins.
What does the doctor say? Like if you were to like overexert yourself, does he say that's for you or against you?
He would probably say like that's against
right.
you.
Right.
Yeah, like why wouldn't you just listen to your body and not do that? He'd be like, well, because it has to get done. And he'd be like, tisk, like learn your lesson.
Right. Well, it's interesting because funny enough, we were just talking about the episode that I did with Fran Garten.
Yeah.
Right.
Love Fran.
Right. And how we were talking about how she's a pain management coach, and she's talking about, you know, like she says it out loud in the podcast, like for all you women out there that are out there doing all the things all the time, stop it.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I know that, and I talk with the women in my groups about this, right? Like this is a people pleasing control mechanism. Like it's all the things to bring us safety and security, right? That's why we do it. Right. We know that there's so much knowledge out there. This is why we do that.
I think
right?
It's pride. There's pride too with that.
Yeah.
Like if I can't do it, I gotta swallow my pride.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, it's almost like I imagine in a way too, you know, bringing in a different perspective. It's almost like, you know, when people go from their house when they're aging and they have to sell their house and get into a residence where someone is there to take care of them, like how that transition would be really, really hard too. Right. So I'm definitely not sitting here saying like, girl, just put the shit down and enjoy yourself. Well, I really would love for you to do that.
There are times where I wish I would, but I don't.
Right. But I wonder too, like, it's also a practice.
It is.
Right.
It's totally a practice.
And I think that like, you know, again, like you're so great with mindset. You're so great with putting the, you know, putting the good energy back in because you know that without it, it's going to be really hard to keep moving forward. And so, you know, by practicing saying no to the things that you really want to do just because you know that you want to physically do them and get them done. Yeah. You know, like that whole, like Fran talked about, like the whole delegation, get other people to do some of the things because they can do them.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are things like that the family will say like, hey, let's go do this or let's go do that. And I'll be like, no, because I probably cannot do that. Right. Like my kids really want to go to like Canada's Wonderland and that type of stuff. And I'd be like, I love roller coasters. I probably should not be on one. I can't walk a straight line on a good day. You want me to walk a straight line after I get off that? Like I'm toast. Like, no, there are just some things where it's just like reality says that's stupid. Like, why would you do that to yourself? I will watch you from a distance, but like, and I have no concept of noise direction, none, like so much so I was at a friend's place, oh my god, I can't even believe I'm saying this, and we were they live out in the country in the bush, and they were like, let's go on the trail, and I was like, yeah, let's go. We were going for a nice walk, and I'm like, wow, like those airplanes are really flying low, and she's like, Vicky, that's a truck on the road, and I was like, what? She's like, you really have no concept of, no.
Wow.
None. I have no idea where noise is coming from.
Wow, that's incredible. It must be such a it's almost like a disorganization, right? It's like
I look like a
culture
confused
shock.
person all the time. Like when people, like at work, I sit at my cubicle and people are like, hi, Vicky. And I'll be like, and they'll like be standing like over there. But I like, are you over there? It's like a 50-50 shot with me all the time. Like they're to the left. No, right. Like I just look confused all the time. But my husband will always walk on my left side all the time because I can't hear if people come at me from the left. So he's kind of like my ear. White noise is very strong. Very strong. So if I don't go out to eat, I don't hang out in restaurants. And it's not because I don't love it. I do. But I get so overstimulated from the noise and trying so hard. Like I will look at people and they're probably thinking, are you like dissecting me? No, man, I'm trying to read your lips and I have no idea what you're saying. It's too loud in here. In retrospect, it's really not. It's just the white noise, the music, the people talking, the chairs moving, like all that stuff is the first thing I hear. And all I see is your lips moving and I'm like, like I look dumbfounded all the time. So I just avoid those type of environments. Or I'll say like, hey, just as an FYI, it's probably a really loud place. Yeah, I ain't going.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know your limits and you know your boundaries.
I do know my limits.
That's good. And I'm sure it took a little figuring that out, right? Because you wouldn't know that until you do it. And then you're like, whoa, sensory overload here.
And because I'm deaf on the left, like when I go through drive-through, people must think like she's an idiot. She's an idiot. I've repeated myself 3 times. Yeah, on my left side. So like I'm the person whose head's like a dog hanging out the window so I can turn my head so I can hear you on the right. Like, and I mean, I giggle about it, but people must look at it and be like, what the hell's going on up there? Like,
I mean, kind of funny though. Kind of have fun with people.
Yeah.
You almost need to like back into the drive-through instead of going forward to be like, hi.
Yeah, just gonna try something new from the passenger side. Yeah, I should get myself a vehicle like the European vehicles. I should drive from on the right. I should
Totally. You should move to Britain.
I should do Britain. Yeah, sorry, I don't like roundabouts, but okay.
Oh, I know they're everywhere there. That would be another problem for you.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, like, you are such an inspiration, and you know, having met you through social, I mean, I never would have known that you had been through such horrific challenges. Really, quite frankly, they're not challenges everybody goes through, and I find you so inspiring because I want to say, you know, it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to cry your face off. It's okay to think, woe is me. And I think that what you're saying and what I agree with is, you know, you can have bad moments because that's being a human being. You can't always be up, and if you're always up, you're faking it, right? Like, like toxic positivity is a real thing, right? So, but I love that you honor that in yourself, and that you have a good sense of humor about where you're at, and that you keep going forward because you know, hey, I'm going to make the best of this day. Yeah. Yeah. You know, most of us need a kick in our ass because most people are sitting with their thumb up their butt trying to just get to the next day. And it's like, chop, chop, like this is it. You only got one shot at this, right? Like you have been given a couple of different scenarios that remind you, you know?
Yeah, like what was it last year? Last year I got my appendix out. Like it was just like,
oh my God,
one thing after another.
They're gonna know you in every hospital in the area.
I have no more. Don't ever like kidnap me for organs. I got none to give. And you know the expression, I need that like a hole in my head. Got the t-shirt for that too. Like I don't have anything left to give.
Oh man. Yeah. Have you ever thought about becoming a stand-up comedian? I think you'd do really well with that.
Yeah. What's the other thing I tell my husband all the time? Like, I only heard half the story because I didn't hear the whole thing. I only heard half of it.
I love it.
Yeah. Now you have to have a good sense of humor. I mean, like you said, there's going to be days, you just kind of like, this really sucks. You just can't get lost in that, because you could get really trapped in that negativity, and that's a really heavy bag to unload. But if you don't put as much in that bag and you keep remembering to empty it, it's an easy bag to carry. But I think I did pretty good.
You did really good.
I think I did pretty good.
You did really good. Well, I want to thank you for coming and chatting with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And sharing your story with our listeners. And if people wanted to follow or keep up with you anywhere, is there anywhere that they can follow?
I'm on social media, but I am a private account. So, but I do follow a lot of people. I do support a lot of locals. I'm here to share my story.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm not really
not
an
interested in having them find you. Okay.
Yeah, no.
So Vicky's going back underground after this. It's funny. I often forget to ask the question. So how can people find you? And then after I'm like, damn it. So I'm like, no. I knew your account was private, but I'm like, I'm asking her
You
anyway.
never know. You never know.
Because if I forget again, people are going to be like, Christine, you never asked that question. Because I get so caught up in the conversation. It's like details, schmeetails. I can always add those in later.
Yeah. I'll share my story, but I don't want no followers.
Well, I have to say, for somebody who is in connection with you, like through Facebook and Instagram, like I love the stories that you share on the regular and little reminders about, being alive.
Yeah.
And that we need to let go of the stuff that's not important and focus on what's right in front of us, right? Live that one day at a time. Live for today.
Yeah.
I think we miss that. We're always this idea, especially in North America, we're always like, okay, what's my next goal? Okay, I achieved it. Boom. Okay, what's the next one? Like we don't take time to celebrate and sit and literally smell the roses, right? Like taking time every day to enjoy the day and find joy in the good in the day, which is what I've loved and been so inspired about you this whole time. And then when I found out how all of this was going down for you, I was like, wow, she's really
making this up. She's like, is she that bored? She needs to post stuff. No,
I was like, you really need to come and tell your story because, so many people need to hear that we're not here forever.
No. And I tell you, it's been, I've been warned about it a few times. Hey, enjoy what you have.
Yeah.
Enjoy your Yeah. It's just, and I remind my kids all the time, life is short. Life's not fair, but life is short. Live the best life you can. You only have one shot at it.
You're doing a great job, Mama.
Thank you.
You're such a great influence for your kids, and they're watching you now. You know this. They're watching you.
Yeah.
And they're going to have many amazing memories of their awesome mom forever. So thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And listeners, thanks for being here. And I know sometimes these stories are hard to hear, right? But, I think if we have so much to learn from Vicky, but really when it all boils down to it is just living for today. Because that's we're not guaranteed anything. And
we aren't.
So soak it up, people. Go soak it up. So that having said, we're gonna cut this short. We're gonna see what kind of fun video footage I get for our little reel later. And we'll see you at the next time. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to this episode. I'd like to invite you to hit the follow button on this podcast so you'll be notified when the next one drops. And if you liked this episode, please leave a review, as it will help others to find this message. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at It's Me, Christine D. Or if you'd like to connect about being a guest on the show, ask me about group or one-on-one joy and mindset coaching, learn more about the Joy Project community, or consider hiring me for your next speaking engagement, please visit itsmechristined.ca. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.